Holy cow. Piers Morgan confronted Colonel Richard Kemp and saying that the Gazan aid distribution sites are basically like killing fields. And, it's terrible what they're doing. And then Colonel just absolutely destroys him. Check it out.
Colonel Kemp, let me bring you in here. You've just been over there. You're very supportive of Israel's government and the IDF and what they're doing. But surely, with all your military experience, even you must be looking at what's happening now in Gaza and thinking this has got to come to an end.
I think everyone's thinking it's got to come to an end. Certainly the Israelis are thinking it's got to come to an end. They've been fighting a vicious, brutal terrorist organization for 20 months that is embedded completely in the civilian population. They've been doing their very best, and I've witnessed it myself inside Gaza with the IDF. They've been doing their very best to minimize the deaths of innocent civilians. And I think they've succeeded to a large extent in that. I don't know what the latest figure is from Hamas, but it's something around 50, 60,000 or thereabouts. That's their estimate. And of course, we can't rely on that in any way, but we've got nothing else to go on. The IDF don't issue estimates of their civilians that they think they might have killed, but they have issued estimates of the number of Hamas terrorists that they think they've killed, obviously not exact. And it's something around about 25 to 30,000.
Why don't they count the civilians?
How do you do that? I mean,
how do they count the terrorists?
Because they're targeting the terrorists. They know who they're targeting, and they know when they believe they've killed them. You can't count every single person that's coming under attack. And the reality is that if those figures are correct, and let's assume for a moment they are, particularly I don't trust the Hamas figures, but let's assume they're correct. That means that it's approximately one civilian killed for every combatant killed inside Gaza in the last 20 months, which is terrible. It's a really terrible statistic. But if you compare it to Afghanistan, the Americans and their allies estimate they killed about 5 civilians for every combatant in Afghanistan and 3 in Iraq. And the United Nations estimate that in urban combat since the Second World War, about 9 civilians have died for every combatant. So it shows, this is not easy. Hamas is doing their level best to make Israel kill as many of their own civilians as possible to achieve exactly what they have achieved, which is a vilification.
But Israel, so my argument would be back to you, Colonel Kemp, is Israel is not achieving its goals. It's not got rid of Hamas, that's clear. It's not got the hostages released. In fact, they've only been released during diplomatic phases of this 20-month war. They're now talking openly through people like Smodrich, the finance minister, of ethnically cleansing the entire Gaza Strip of all Palestinians, which is a war crime if they try and do that. They try and kick them all out. So none of the goals which they set out to achieve.
Piers Morgan found out that there were like right-wing ministers in Israel, and he suddenly had this realization, oh my God, look at what they're saying. It's like, look at what the Muslims are saying. Look at what the Gazans say every single day. Look at what Hamas promises to do to the Jews every single day. It's like they obviously want to destroy Israel. And maybe a few Israeli ministers want to go all the way and destroy Gaza as well. But it's definitely not the majority of Israelis.
Have been achieved and don't look like anything near being achieved. And at the same time, you've got 70% of Gaza has been destroyed. You've got this moving population being moved around, and wherever they move to, they then get bombed again. You've got thousands of them queuing up desperately for food, despite Israelis claiming no one there is hungry. Well, what are they stampeding each other for? To get fragments of food, if that's not the case. And then you've got this Haaretz report, which of course Netanyahu has emphatically denied. And the Haaretz report coming from IDF soldiers they source, saying that a lot of the people dying in these shooting incidents in the food lines are being shot dead by Israelis. So you're pulling people, if this is true, and it's an Israeli publication, if this is true, well, you can laugh, Colonel Kemp, but why would you laugh?
I laugh because it's
killing
fiction.
field. That was a quote. It's a killing field.
The Haaretz report, as far as I can see, deliberately distorted what they were told. In the Hebrew version, the soldiers apparently said, we were told to shoot in the direction of Hamas, of civilians who were rioting.
No, that's not true. No, that I've read that. I've read that. It's simply not true. That's a conspiracy theory. Honestly, it is a conspiracy theory because they talked about the killing fields. They talked about lots of people dying. 570 people dying.
I read the article, and I don't believe it's true. I've been, as I said before, I've been inside Gaza with the IDF before. I've seen the extraordinary measures they take to minimize civilian
even the
deaths.
report you gave, Colonel Kemp, even the report you did had gunfire in the background at the end. Let's take a look.
Many of the people behind me here have told me it's the first time they've ever received free aid. So don't believe the propaganda that's been churned out by Hamas and amplified by too much of the international and national media.
I mean, it was almost like a comedy sketch if it wasn't so serious. There you are saying, don't believe any of the stories of the Israelis shooting at people here, and next thing here is a machine gun going off.
Yeah, you may find machine guns funny, but
I don't.
Those of us who have
I don't find it funny, but it flew in the face of what you literally were saying on camera.
You said it was a comedy sketch. That machine gun.
I said it would be funny if it had been a comedy sketch, but it was actually serious.
I was in that base, in that aid distribution site for around about 2 to 3 hours. In that time, I heard a huge number of explosions, gunfire, etc., because this is in a war zone, and you get machine gun fire, and you get explosions in a war zone. That machine gun fire, if you looked at that video clip carefully, you would see that not one single Gazan flinched when that fire was heard, because it was nowhere near the aid distribution site. It was distant fire, constantly going on. But you can try and turn that into the idea that it's the IDF, as many people have on social media, tried to say this was the IDF shooting civilians. Why would the IDF want to shoot at civilians at a humanitarian aid site that they support, that they help to set up, and that they want to work? They wouldn't. It would make no sense whatsoever. The people that are doing the shooting are Hamas. I spoke to many Gazan civilians, at least 50 in that.
Why don't the journalists get in then? Let the journalists in, and that can be.
He's in. He's a journalist. He's let in, and he is telling you what he saw. If you want to go, I'm sure there's a way to get into Gaza. I highly doubt that Piers Morgan would get off his fat ass and go to Gaza, but if he wanted to, he could probably get it.
Be verified.
They have told me. Why don't I let the journalists? Got nothing to do with me.
Why doesn't Israel let the journalists in then?
This is shameful. This is shameful.
You'll have to ask Israel that. I would.
Well, we all know why they're not letting them in, Colonel Kemp. It's because they don't want the world to see what's happening. Let me.
The reason why they're not letting in the journalists is multi reasoned. Number one is because if any journalist dies, it'll go on Israel's death count, regardless of who kills him or kills her. Second of all, what will end up happening is, just like Haaretz, just like 90% of the media at this point, they are anti-Israel. So whatever they see, they will flip it. And listen, you can say that, that's disgusting. People understand the mainstream media has an incredible bias. Every single mainstream outlet, you let them in, there's a good chance there's going to be a lot of misinformation. And I do believe they let in some reporters like Colonel Richard Kemp, like Trey Yingst from Fox News, and many others as well. So this isn't like just a few people that they're letting in. They're just not letting in a lot of the European and the Arab and the anti-Israel journalists into Gaza. And again, Piers Morgan tries to say, look, they're shooting them. There's gunfire in the background. No. He pointed it out. Then none of the Gazans flinched. And let's go back. Let's see.
Here have told me it's the first time they've ever received free aid. So don't believe the propaganda that's been churned out by Hamas and amplified by too much of the international and national media.
It was almost like a comedy sketch.
They did not move. There was zero, oh my God, somebody's shooting, let's run. Generally, that happens and everybody freaks out and runs away. And another thing to think about is if somebody does charge at you and your life is in danger as a soldier, and I'm sure that this happened, you're going to have to protect yourself. And then that is 100% the case. For more Subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.